So we're here at the launch of the Irish Farmers Alliance, and for those people who maybe haven't heard of this group or they're not familiar with it, what exactly is the Irish Farmers Alliance and what are you trying to achieve?
Well, it's actually the Farmers Alliance, not so much the Irish Farmers Alliance, and it's basically to represent not just farmers but landowners in general, and also to bridge the divide between farmers and consumers. There are a lot of people out there not in the farming community but living in the farming community and dependent on the farming community that are not represented. And you saw there was a fairly significant cross-section of people in there today, including a big delegation from the Greenways. So there's big issues threatening people's ownership of property. There's big issues threatening land use, big issues threatening food security and food production, and the whole viability of farmers in terms of their activity.
So obviously there are farming representative organisations like the Irish Farmers Association and so on that exist in Ireland. Why do you think this group needed to be set up specifically and the job couldn't just be left to them?
Well, I think if you ask some of the people who are in there today, and if you listen to the presentations that some of those people made, I think you'll get your answer. They don't feel represented. I think the word was used there a number of times, not represented. Caroline van der Plas of the Dutch BBB party made the same point in relation to the situation in the Netherlands and why they rose to the top and had such meteoric rise, is that they weren't being represented by the farmers' organisations. The same thing is happening here.
The rural independent TDs such as Matty McGrath and Michael Collins and so on are now looking to create their own Dutch farmers style political party and try to replicate what happened there here in this country. Do you think you could see your organisation working with them in some capacity or finding common ground?
I'm not so much interested in individuals as the platform. There's a big flurry of activity going on politically, which took place after we made it clear that we were in contact with the BBB and that they were coming back to us. It was intended that Caroline van der Plas would be here in person today, but of course you'll understand that she has a huge commitment as a result of the Senate elections. But you heard her there today say that she's looking forward to coming back in the near future to meet us. So I can't say any more than that.
Are you happy with the way the day's events went and the turnout?
Most definitely. It's in some respects it's overwhelming, because the big problem in attracting farmers and landowners and consumers into a meeting like this, it has never been attempted before. There's farmer organisations and there's community associations and consumer associations and all that. But for us to do what we're doing is quite different. And to bring in, say, people like those that are affected by the greenways and the way in which local government is actually dealing with that, to get those to come in with consumers, with people who are adding value to agricultural produce, and sit in the same meeting and find common purpose in the way that they did today with over 300 people, it's an achievement.
What do you think of the fact that there are some groups in Ireland who essentially talk about delimiting the right to private property? Because I know that's one of your guys' platforms, is defending private property and property owners' rights. And then there are groups such as People Before Profit, for example, who talk about how we should remove that from the Constitution for the sake of fixing the housing crisis, for example. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I completely disagree with it, for starters. But if we're not careful, what will happen is between national government and the EU, if the EU got one more swipe at us with the treaty, they'd take the vote away. But if there's a referendum here in relation to what you're talking about, and if it's passed, we may just as well go home. There'll be no such thing as owning private property, and they'll basically have you convinced that you'll own nothing but you'll be happy. That's outrageous.
Do you think that the European Union is a friend of Irish farmers?
Not at all. The European Union, unfortunately, is it's a power bloc, and I'd say the number one agenda is military. What has happened since we joined? There was a few golden years where things happened and there was roads made and farmers got a few bob, but then there were schemes, and people now are reared on schemes. And they realise that if they allocate, if the scheme is attractive enough, they'll get people to buy into it. Take, for example, the fishermen with perfectly good fishing vessels costing maybe €1 million or €2 million. that are decommissioning them. Decommission them, not sending them to West Africa to help fishermen there, but chop them up. That's madness. But they're giving out so much money, there's a lot of the fishermen are taking it.